Greetings, everyone, and thanks so much for tuning in to this week's edition of Teaching Tales. I am still Brent Coley, your host. I am a principal at the elementary level in beautiful Southern California, and joining me again, Rushton Hurley.
Am I the first two-timer?
You are the first. I was driving in today thinking, yes, you are the first two-time guest of
Man, that's awesome. That's like when you take your own cup into Starbucks, and instead of giving you the tall level, they give you the grande level. That's what that is like.
You're like venti. We're going to give you the venti size today.
You honor me, sir.
Well, and for those of you listening, if you have not already tuned in, episode 7, Rushton and I chatted last time about relationships and connecting with students. And we did that one via Google Hangout. There was a little audio quality, some dropping out and stuff like that, but the message came through. If you have not listened to that one, I really, really, really encourage you. Rushton shared some really powerful stories about the impact that we can have with students. So check that out. Not right now. Listen to this one first, and then go back and listen to episode 7. But we are actually in person today. We are at the Q conference.
That's right.
And we have carved out some time. We've
in a place that appears to be fairly quiet.
Fairly quiet. So if a car drives by or something like that, we're outside on a little patio. So we're going for it. So
excellent.
Rushton, thank you. When you said, "Hey, I've got another story," and you said staff meetings.
I did.
And we were just talking as we were walking before we said before we started recording, and I said my curiosity is piqued.
I can spell that, by the way. It has a Q. Not everybody knows that. Yeah.
Very good. It does have a Q.
The things to be proud of, right there.
P-I-C-Q-U-E-D?
P-I-Q-U-E-D.
No C. Okay.
It disses the C. It's true.
Okay.
Right.
Interesting. See, I've learned something already.
Excellent.
I've learned something. Well, Rushton, staff meetings.
Staff meetings.
Tell everyone a story. Tell me a story about staff meetings.
I know, and I'm imagining people listening to this podcast going, what was I thinking, right? There's probably something sharp I can thrust into my skull right now, but no. So several years ago, I'm at a little conference in Mumbai, India, right? And there were people from international schools. It was ed tech team gig, very very fun. I mean, they've got a great model. They do cool stuff. But I get to talking to this teacher from the American School of Delhi. Now, I don't know why staff meetings came up, but I was prompted to say, hey, so, how are the staff meetings at your school? Mm-hmm. And she said, oh, they're great. I said, really? She said, oh, they're really, really good. I always try to get there early to get a good seat.
Something you don't hear every day.
No. This is
the
not
subject of staff meetings.
No. So I was prompted at that point to say, this is your staff meeting we're talking about, right? She said, oh yeah, and so I said, well, they're that good. What makes them so good? She said, well, we call them the Bob Show. I said, the Bob Show.
The Bob Show.
And I'm wondering who's got a camera
Bob?
on me at this point,
Yeah.
right? And who is Bob? And it turns out that Bob was their superintendent at the time.
Okay.
And like 4 times a year or so, he would have the entire teaching staff of the school or set of schools that constitute the American School of Delhi, if I'm remembering that right, together for a staff meeting. Uh-huh. But these things were beloved events, right? And the thing was, you think of a staff meeting and you think of somebody getting up and saying, all right, we got a lot to cover.
Talking for 60 minutes.
Wah. And you're like, oh, man, right? And no. What Bob would do is he'd start by saying hello and apparently, identifying a couple of cool things and then launching straight into a really interesting video of some kind. So he would pick the kinds of videos I think that we all love to share.
Sure.
Those inspiring, kind of like, oh my God, that was such a
3
cool
or 4
story.
minute video, something like, yeah.
Because it turns out that we all like stories. Oh, meta comment.
Hence the podcast.
Yes. So they do this, and then they would talk about what was in the video, what was within that story, and how it affects at least how it affects their thinking about what they do, and they do several of these, and apparently they every meeting, they'd exchange great ideas, they'd laugh, they'd cry, there'd be these just fantastic stories that would really, touch them emotionally. And so, they had this sense of the staff meeting as being that. And so when I think about like the normal staff meeting and how beloved they're not, I guess would be one way to put it, right?
No. If they were optional, many would
might choose not to be.
They
there.
may pass.
It could be. So the question becomes, how do we take a staff meeting and make them the kinds of things that actually yield stories about who we can be professionally? And that to me is the key piece of it. And as I've talked to people about these ideas over the past couple of years, I find that there's a lot of people who really do kind of have that sense of no, the staff meeting can be cool. It can be a time of exploration. It can be a time when people are sharing, some really interesting out there ideas that don't get shot down because we have a kind of problematic, dysfunctional professional environment. Sure. Because people become the kinds of professionals that will trust that ideas are worth exploring, right? And that's powerful. When I think about the kinds of things that contribute to a good staff meeting, I wrote this up in that book that I shamelessly plugged the first time I was on your podcast.
Yes.
And oh look, I did it again, right?
Good book, by the way.
Good man.
We'll give the title at the end, but you have to listen all the way till the end.
Yeah, fair, totally fair. So I think about, okay, we have all of these experiences at school all the time. Really cool little things that happen. And often those happen and don't get shared.
Yes.
Right? And the staff meeting is actually the perfect time for those.
Yes.
And so how do you bring them out? And I was thinking, okay, well, just anything, any online survey tool, Google Forms, whatever. And you have 3 questions on your survey. Your name, your contact info on the possibility that it's not a member of the staff, it's a parent or whatever, and the cool thing you saw. And so maybe that's how you start your staff meeting. Is you say, all right, everybody, jump on the cool stuff survey. Yeah. Let us know. And so people will put things like, the expected stuff. Kudos to the water polo team for doing well, or whatever that might be. But there'll also be things like, so this group of students, decided that they were going to help the janitors by picking up a piece of trash every day at lunch. Not that they tossed themselves, right? So they're like, I'm
going to get credit for, look, I picked up a piece of trash.
Zero-sum game. So yeah, and capturing all of those and having them in a space where people can go to and say, well, let's talk about that one. Hey, well, what could that be if systematized in some way? Can we retain the cool aspects of that? Well, that's an exploratory piece, right? So if you think of the staff meeting as a time where cool stuff gets exchanged, cool stuff gets discussed, and then maybe people do some exploring together, whether it's via stories like the Bob Show, or it's the kind of thing that is done through free technology, where it's like, all right, here's a tool that we don't know squat about, but you got 10 minutes. Work with somebody not on your grade level or not in your department or anything like that, and just come up with 3 crazy ideas as to how it might be used as part of what we do at school. The idea being that you end up with several ideas, one of which is going to make people laugh, and perhaps even make people go, it's not that bad an idea, really. How can we do that? And some, that'll be like, we do need to do that. How do we put that in motion? Well, now you've got people sharing ideas to make things cooler, right? It's kind of one of the pieces of my own talking is like, we don't talk enough about the pedagogical value of cool and fun. And so if that becomes a part of what a staff meeting is, then all the more fun.
People they're not dragging their feet on the way. Like you said, they're there early to get a good seat. So.
Makes you wonder about the layout of the room, of course, but but it doesn't matter, right? Clearly, if they're willing to talk to a total stranger somewhere and say, no, our staff meetings are great, something's going right.
So, absolutely. Now, success. You call those success surveys? Is that what you're referring to in your book? I think because I remember when I jotted. I think I said in the last podcast, I jotted myself a note like, I need to do this. I need to do this. And staff meetings, again, as a site principal, I'm so glad we're talking about this because this is an area that I need. There's always room for improvement, but this is something that I don't want my staff. I don't want my teachers dragging their feet to staff meetings.
Right.
The difficulty sometimes, like in my district, I have 1 hour a month for staff meetings. Right. So sometimes it's hard. It's like, oh, geez. There is stuff that I'm sure you've seen on Twitter or online somewhere the T-shirts that say "I survived a staff meeting that could have been an email." I mean, and I've sat in those meetings, and transparently, I'm sure I've led those meetings.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes it's like there's things that I can't risk the opportunity. Can't risk the possibility of sending it in an email that's not going to be read,
Right.
or something like that. But as you're talking about these success surveys, this year, one of the best staff meetings we have had was I did. It's like you're affirming what I did, and cool. My teachers affirmed it too, because the whole staff meeting was in advance, a few weeks before. I said, I want you to bring, and I don't remember exactly how I termed it, but I said, bring like your one best thing.
Nice.
And I gave example. I said it could be classroom management, it could be a piece of technology, it could be a lesson you're done, it could be a book. One thing that is so good, you need to share it with somebody else. And when we came to and it was, I mean, you had kindergarten teachers bringing in bins of stuff. You had people bringing in laptops.
Yeah.
They sat around tables. Not just within their grade level,
right.
Different grade levels. I mean, for certain things we spent time with like primary teachers and things like that, but they rotated, and I just walked around and sat in and listened, and it was so great because it wasn't me talking, it was them talking, it was them sharing, and one of the best pieces of feedback afterwards was one of my teachers who is going through induction, formerly known as BITSA, which I remember BITSA was... There were a lot of...
Staff meeting-esque.
I had a great mentor that I was assigned to, but there were hoops that needed to be jumped. And I get the whole thing. You got to document things to justify the funding and things like that. But he said, this is what BITSA should be like. This is what induction should be like. When we have our monthly meetings, this is what they need to be doing.
Right.
I mean, yes, there's stuff that we need to know and they need... But how great would it be to come and share? Because everyone walked out of there not only sharing with somebody, but being shared with. I mean, a great, just simple classroom management strategies. Have you ever heard of, for example, Joe Bowler in the keynote just a few minutes ago talked about ucubed.org. I mean, if you haven't seen that website, listeners, it's awesome, amazing.
Spell out ucubed.
Ucubed, YOUCUBED.org.
Cool.
Thank you for, you're right. They would have thought maybe it was the U. Yeah, YOUCUBED.org. Awesome mathematical resources, videos centered around growth mindset.
Nice.
And it just outstanding. But going back to as a site, as I was thinking earlier today about, okay, we're going to talk about staff meetings. Have you heard Weston Kieschnick's podcast called Teaching Keating?
No, sounds like one I need to.
It is, and for those of you listening, Weston Kieschnick is former teacher, administrator. He's now a coach. Okay. He works for the International Center for Leadership in Education, ICLE. He and his wife do a podcast called Teaching Keating. Every week they take a movie or a character from a movie or a television show, and they discuss, very informal, they talk about how it relates to education.
Nice.
It is so great to, I mean, they've done Zoolander, they've done Sound of Music, they've done that they've done the Peanuts teacher, the wah everything. Yesterday, their newest episode is Yoda, I mean, who doesn't love Yoda?
Right.
But one of Yoda's quotes was, I'm trying to remember it correctly, and I love Star Wars, so I can't mess this up, or Star Wars people out there are going to get mad at me. It's like, train yourself to let go of all that you fear to lose. And they talked about what do teachers fear to lose? What do principals, what do administrators fear to lose? And they talked about control. And in a staff meeting, it's like, well, I can't give up control, because what if it doesn't go well?
Right.
What if it doesn't go well? Which
I'd much rather go with the thing that I know doesn't go well.
Exactly. At least something's not going to happen that's going to completely put me on the spot. They're going to ask me a question that I don't know the answer to, it was 2 or 3 years ago that reminded me when I was listening to that is here at Q, I had the opportunity to present with Tim and Scott Bedley. and we were doing it was six tools for digital storytelling. Was our thing. And a couple weeks before the conference, we're doing a group conference call, and they're like, hey guys, we should crowdsource this. We cannot just be up there and talk and say, here's number one, we should crowdsource this. Now, Rushton, I like control.
Structure.
I like structure. That's a better word. I was the typist teacher that has structure, but it's comforting.
Yeah.
And when they were taught, these guys are, I don't know, do you know Tim and Scott Bedley? They've got the Bedley Brothers podcast, and they are out-of-the-box thinkers.
Cool.
And they do amazing. I've been in Tim's classroom. It's amazing what they do. But I'm going to be honest, and I've told them, it terrified me.
Yeah.
Because it's like, whoa, we want to stand up there at the front of a session and basically say, all right, so what do you guys got? Type thing. And long story, it's a long story, but getting it shorter, our slide deck, we did have a slide deck. We gave it to them beforehand and said, sabotage it.
Oh, nice.
Not that you give a bit.ly and say, hey, you can go in and you view it. It wasn't view only. It was editable.
Wow.
And they're like, this is going to be great. And I was like, okay, guys, I trust you. Let's go for it. And it killed.
Oh, yeah.
It killed. People loved it because, again, like that staff meeting, it wasn't us. It wasn't three guys in the front, the Bedley brothers and the bald guy. It was, they were saying, there's 200 people in this room. You tell me, what have you found? We had Google Form. And I say all of this not to say, wow, look at the thing, because it wasn't me. If I would have been the one...
Structurally.
If I would have been the one, I probably would not have gone down that road.
And every time you walk into a staff meeting, you are with dozens, hundreds, depending on the thing, of people who have amazing experiences, who have wonderful ideas, and the question is just, do we give people avenues to share them?
Yeah.
And the answer is, too often we don't.
We don't.
Right. And so having those kind of moments where it's like, oh, okay, wait a minute, I had no idea that Phil over there, and Phil, if you're listening, I was trying to think of what the line is at the end of the movie. No connection to characters real. Or, blah, blah, blah.
Fiction. Okay, yeah.
But I had no idea Phil, was doing something like that. And so then there comes that time when someone, sees Phil 2 days later and says, hey, that thing you mentioned in the staff meeting. Tell me more about that.
Show me.
Yeah. And those are our moments, right? The more people are talking with each other, now we're getting into that space where maybe you can even have moments where teachers say, let's team teach. All right. So let's have this activity, and on Friday I'll visit your class on my break, and on Monday you'll visit my class on your break, and let's try it out and just see what we think. Right.
Yeah.
And once that started happening, I had the good fortune to connect with a program called the International Internship Program, which is a Japanese thing. And what they do is they try to get young Japanese people who want to have an international experience to go and live and work overseas, connected to a school where they can be an assistant teacher of some kind.
Oh,
yeah.
Very cool.
Very cool. Matter of fact, it doesn't cost the school anything other than finding a homestay and lunch. Or at least it didn't at the time. I hope it still works the same way, right? But 3 times had people from that program, come and work with me, and all 3 of them just these fantastically interesting people, and day after day having 2 adults in the classroom. Oh. There's so many good things that happen as a result of that. Because you can say, all right, when you're doing this, I can take time to just sit and watch the students, because if you're not doing something in class, if you're watching, you see things you won't see when you're doing.
And that's the beauty of when I'm popping into classrooms and things. It's not the teacher you're watching. It's the kids. And I always use the example of your car, the headlight. When you're in your car, you don't know your headlight's out.
Totally.
It's not till you get out of the car or someone outside says, hey, do you know your headlight's out? Or that may be a little harsh. Do you know your headlight is perhaps askew or something like that?
That's a fantastic word with no Q in it.
ASKEW.
Good man.
There we go.
Right.
But that's, when somebody else is there, and it's not like you're doing it wrong.
No.
It's, have you tried this? Or maybe, or even seen someone else. I wouldn't have even thought of doing it that way.
Right. You know, we all need moments where somebody says, you know, I wonder if blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And when I think of the opportunity that a staff meeting represents in terms of having a bunch of talented people in the same place able to share some ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the more you think about it along those lines, the crazier it becomes to think in terms of, no, let's just have one person talking at the entire group the entire time. What, really? You know, that seems like a good idea?
Yeah.
And yes, you know, I mean, there's stuff that will need to go out in the email, and yes, some people will not read it, and yes, we'll need to say things to make sure because it's really critical.
Yeah.
But if we went to the trouble of sending out in an email that got read or didn't, we can reference it as school leaders in a way that just says, hey, don't forget this is really critical.
Remember the email? Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be any more than that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm doing a session here called 4 Fun, Quick, and Powerful Ways to Start Class.
I will be there.
You're a good man. And the whole idea there as well, right? You know, you want class to go well. Mm-hmm. Well, how are you starting it?
Yeah.
How are you starting this class? If this is important, a plane will fly overhead. Oh, listen.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. So if you start class by saying something along the lines of, all right, everybody, I need you to settle down. We got a lot of important stuff to cover. You know, that's not all that different than I want everybody to move in the lowest gear possible. You know, that please occupy the lowest gear you can.
Yes.
Right?
Slow down.
Think in terms of enduring what I'm about to inflict upon you. Right? And instead, just something happens. Okay, deal with this. Think about these things. Try this out. And a good starter, you know, whether it's a staff meeting or a class, means that 60 minutes or whatever that period of time is can be like 180 if everybody started in fifth gear, right? So yeah, I mean, you know, we often talk about, I don't have enough minutes. Well, you know, you don't have enough good minutes. We need to craft good minutes.
We say,
and have lots of them.
I don't have enough time. It's how are we prioritizing the time that we do have?
Right.
Yeah. Well, as before, thank you. I mean,
my pleasure.
Well,
I'm
again, as you're talking here, it's like for anyone listening, it's like the lesson that I'm learning, and if nobody else learns anything, it's okay because I learned something, and I have standing agenda items on our things like we have a celebratory thing where we honor the excellence that our staff is doing. That's a standing agenda item.
Cool.
I need to have a standing agenda item of sharing.
Yeah.
What kind of like, we had that one day where the whole thing was, but okay, I may not have time to do that because again, 1 hour a month, but if that's hey, who's got something amazing to share? And let them
do
know
it anonymously. Get them because
some people
it's
will not.
a huge barrier.
Some people
to
will
say
not
it in front
be,
of the group,
and some people will not want to come off as that's a great point. Great point. They will not want to come off like, oh, there she goes again. It's like what? Or when people may not be thinking. They might be thinking that, but they may not be thinking that. That's a great point.
Yeah, and you look at what comes in via a forum or in a chat or whatever it is, and you can go and highlight somebody who hasn't been highlighted in a while.
Yes.
Not as an act of charity, but because what we want to keep reminding people is that everybody on this campus is capable of doing something cool.
Yes.
It's just a matter of getting more and more ideas from each other, and this is that setting where we can do it.
And if you're a classroom teacher. Doing the same thing with your kids, doing same thing with your students. I mean, requires a little vulnerability in terms of geez, it might be what could we do to make class better or
it's true. What you really risk in that scenario is them really liking you because you are an honest and genuine person. Right?
Yes,
that's what you're risking.
Exactly. What a great point. You're risking your lessons being better, your students being more engaged.
Can't do that.
Why would we want that? Heaven forbid. So, Rushton, thank you.
My pleasure.
We made it through. There no trains rolled by. We had a plane.
No, but that emphasized a point. That's okay.
Yes, it did.
I'd love to make the shameless plug.
Yes,
excellent.
I was gonna get there.
Oh no, I had to jump in. So the book that came out in January is called "Making Your School Something Special." I'd love for people to read it, give me feedback. The second plug, which you may not have known was coming, is that I just finished making your teaching something special.
Excellent.
And I'm really into the idea of having people read it and say, oh, make sure not to include this when it actually goes to print. This offended me greatly, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Or, I like this, but what about this? Anybody who's listening to the podcast who says, oh, I'd love to, share some ideas on that. Email me at rushton@gmail.com. That's Rush, RUSHTON, ton, 2,000 pounds, at gmail.com. And just say, hey, I'm interested in your teaching book, and I'll send you a PDF copy for free, and just ask that you tell me what you think.
Yeah.
That's, it's that thing.
Because that's what you're trying to do is help teachers.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Well, I've enjoyed the first one, so we will look forward to the second one as well. So, as always, good luck with your sessions.
Thanks, sir.
I will be in the one. I think the other one conflicts with one of my sessions, so I will not be able to do that.
Well, may they both go well.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for listening. As always, appreciate it. If you have not yet subscribed, remember we're in iTunes, Google Play, or on my website, brentcoley.com. Since we're spelling a lot today, we'll BRENTCOLEY.com on the podcast page. Drop us a review, a rating. We would appreciate it. As always, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.